Voters in Wicomico County have a chance to weigh in on who will represent them in District 2 on the County Council. The incumbent is Nicole Acle, who was appointed to the seat after Council Member Mark Kilmer stepped down. Her challenger is 40-year-old Alex Scott, owner of the Brick Room in downtown Salisbury. He says he would bring his business experience to the county government. We first turned to Scott, and he's on the phone with us this morning. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So I want to start out with probably the most controversial thing to happen just recently, which is the county executive position not being filled. In one of your responses, you talk about that you're in this race to stop fighting and start working. You say we've seen a political appointee to the county council completely derail the selection of the county executive. What did you mean by that, and what do you think went wrong in terms of this county executive selection?
It's really an issue of transparency. You know, that word's been thrown around a lot, and it's been clear to everyone that I've spoken with. And as a business owner that has its doors open to the general public, I hear a lot of people talking. A lot of people reached out to me, and they were really upset about how the county council handled this. The charter is very clear how a new county executive is to be appointed, and they completely failed to do so. And what made it worse is they didn't explain why they failed.
So what do you think then went wrong? I mean, they are supposed to appoint someone, and apparently they couldn't decide.
Sure, it's hard to speculate, but many people have. And that's why you hear terms like backdoor deals thrown out there. And, what are the relationships they have with different people? And so there's a lot of people, just kind of left guessing how something like this could happen. I have to, I'm running against Nicole Acle, so, I would have to recuse myself, from pointing a finger and really, hitting home why I think she made the choices that she did, because obviously I have a conflict of interest there. And I would expect that our council people would do the same thing. If, they have a conflict of interest, then they need to tell us what that is and recuse themselves as well. And at the end of the day, when you follow the law, and you've got your candidates in front of you, why wouldn't they choose the candidate they had? And everybody knows who I'm talking about. That's Representative Carl Anderton. He has great experience, plenty of connections, which we're going to need in Annapolis. Coronavirus has left us hurting. As a small business owner that's been very much directly impacted by all this, I want a strong advocate making sure that my county is taken care of, and they completely dropped the ball.
Well, in terms of the other issue that came up, which was the library, the resignation of the executive director, and some of it seemed to deal with the idea that perhaps she was suggesting anyway there was some micromanaging going on, amongst other things. How would you approach something like the library?
As somebody that grew up at a time where the library was a safe haven, and it's sad to see, what's become of our library here in Wicomico. It was always a point of pride as a kid growing up around here. And so, to see where they're fighting with something as wholesome as a library is beyond me. I understand that, some of what they were doing was controversial, and, I'm not saying that I 100% know exactly what had happened. But, at the end of the day, when you have somebody, in charge of the library, like Ms. Teagle was, you've got to let her do her job. And, for the county to try to step in, especially when it comes to grants and things of that nature that, where we want to improve our county resources, I can't believe that they would do that or should. And I'm hoping that we're able to rectify that situation soon, because she was a loss to the county for sure.
Do you think that, by the way, some of this is simply a structural problem? And in addition, you mentioned a moment ago that you had your own conflict of interest. Could you detail that as well? But is there a structural issue here as well?
Well, I mean, my conflict of interest is just going to be any time, as a candidate running against, Nicole. I obviously have a conflict there, and that's just something I need to at least detail. But I'm using it more as a point to the larger issue.
And what about is there a structural problem, and is it a situation for perhaps the county charter must be, say, rewritten, perhaps snap elections or something else involved in this kind of succession?
I mean, after watching what just happened, I wouldn't be opposed to the idea, because, I feel like we failed the citizens of Wicomico County. So I suppose the county charter, I thought it was very clear, 45 days. They pushed it back, and then we got cute with some legal definitions. And, I really don't think that we needed to rewrite it, but after watching what happened, I think we might have to.
I want to turn, by the way, to the COVID situation. A lot of small businesses like yourself, for instance, have been impacted. What can the county do in order to help you guys out? Because for better or for worse, the virus is here. People don't necessarily like to go out. There are restrictions, if there are any restrictions in the county that you support. What about that particular issue?
There's a lot there. And I've had COVID. I fought it hard for a week. And then the second week, it was just a lingering, annoying disease. To hear people call it the flu is kind of funny, because it really wasn't a flu or a cold. It was a completely new and unique disease. I had to completely I didn't have to, but I took extra precautions, because you don't want to be the business that spreads it, one. I have a lot of concern for my employees, so I want to make sure that I'm looking out for them. So we did everything we could to make sure that we were safe and that our patrons were as well. To watch other businesses suffer through this, it is trying. But as a community, we've kind of risen up. Right now, the city of Salisbury had grants that they put out. There are other small grants that were available. And this is, again, this kind of goes back to a county executive. You need somebody out there advocating for small businesses like myself.
I want to turn to the issue of education. You want to expand vocational technology, particularly at Parkside High. How would you do that, and how would you find the money to do it?
Finding the money is always the issue. I think one of the issues that we're seeing, and this is talking to developers and things like that, is places like Lewis, Delaware, they issued, I think it was like over 4,000 or so new permits for building, and Wicomico County was a couple hundred. We need to increase our tax base here. We need to increase our schools is one that's going to keep people here. It's going to improve the quality of students that we have entering the workforce, which I think a lot of people forget once they leave school, that they were once that 18-year-old kid that's just coming out of school and looking for a job or looking for continued education. And, these are going to be our citizens, just a couple years from there. And, as I've gotten older, I've realized how time flies and, how these kids are younger and younger, but they just keep coming. And we need to make sure that they're prepared and that they want to stay in the area. That's going to increase our tax base. But, we're talking long-term strategy at this point. Additional money right now for Parkside Vocational, I'd love to start to find it. And I think that's reaching out to other businesses that might have a need of employees. I think there's a lot of synergy that is out there that we're not utilizing. And then but mainly for schools right now. The only budget talks we can discuss right now is Mardella. That school is way behind. We've improved Parkside. I was there when they improved Parkside and put the vocational school on. The renovations to Bennett were fantastic. We need to focus on getting Mardella up to speed, and then we can come back around to Parkside vocational, because a lot of these kids these days, they don't have to go to a 4-year school to be active contributing members of society. There are some great tradespeople I know out there, whether it's welding or car repair. So many people I know that make a fantastic living farming. A lot of my family, it's a hard life, but man, they love it. So we need to, encourage these students to branch out and take advantage of everything that may be available to them.
You've, by the way, suggested that perhaps the county should renegotiate its contract with Comcast Xfinity for, I believe you indicate, refusing to wire parts of the county. Is that, one, feasible, and two, what does that mean?
Well, I've made no secret. I'm not a fan of Comcast. I hope my computer stays on today. They have a monopoly over us. And I wish we had more choices, but, they do take advantage of a lot of government programs. And like I said, we just don't see that love back where we need it, especially in expanding broadband to some of our rural areas that were part of several plans that never came to fruition. I'm definitely open to exploring any options. But I'd really like to bring them to the table and try to figure out, where our lack of communication is and how we can progress the county moving forward.
Finally, in terms of the environment, you say that note that you're a son of a farmer. How would you bridge the gap between farmers on the one hand and environmentalists on the other? I mean, there seems to be some conflicts that they come up. Sometimes they don't see themselves in harmony with the other. What would be your approach?
Well, again, I feel like these things always come down to a lack of communication. Like the DAF tank in Hebron, that I understand that they were able to push that through. I don't know how, but the residents there are seriously affected by that, and we need to address it, because we can't have industrial waste calling itself agricultural products when clearly it's not. And that's, again, if we had communicated this more thoroughly, I don't think it would have reached the point where it's at now. And when it comes to environmental issues that are going to come up in the future, that's where that communication is going to be vital now. Because as things change, I have a tiny piece of tidal water in my backyard, and I've noticed how over the last 15 years I've lived at that property, the water has just gotten a little bit higher every year. And it's all of these slight changes that we need to talk to our environmentalists and get them to work with our farmers to make sure that our farmers are still making a good living while not impacting, the environment in a negative way, so that they can continue to farm and that we can continue to grow our community.
We've been speaking with Alex Scott. He's owner of the Brick Room in downtown Salt Lake City, also running for the 2nd District on the County Council and challenging the incumbent Nicole Acle. And we appreciate you taking the time to speak with us this morning.
Don, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
This has been Delmarva Today. I'm Don Rush. Thanks for listening. Voters in Wicomico County will get their chance to weigh in on who will fill the District 2 seat on the County Council. Welcome to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. Incumbent Nicole Acle was appointed to the seat after Mark Kilmer stepped down. She's being challenged by Alex Scott, owner of the Brick Room in downtown Salisbury. Acle herself is also an owner of a number of local businesses and serves at a time when the coronavirus pandemic has taken its toll on the community. And we are on the phone this morning. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. So one of the things I wanted to first turn to is the search for the county executive. A lot of people had strong reaction to what had taken place to replace Bob Culver after his death. Give us a sense about what went on there. Did something go wrong, or what's a sense about how that unfolded for you?
The passing of Executive Culver was an incredibly emotionally difficult time for everyone. Those on the council, those working for county government and state government, and federal officials. The charter, when first written, did not predict that we would have a county executive pass away in office. The charter states the council has 45 days to appoint a replacement, which is very much in line with how state and federal government appointments are done. We received 2 legal opinions to clarify the 45 days, and this is a recommended timeline but not mandatory. The interviews were held in open session. Voting was held in an open session, so the public was able to see how every candidate interviewed and how every council member voted. We also allowed for public comment so they could express how they felt during the interviews, and it was also televised. So, very transparent process that we decided to follow. And after much public input, we had decided that the best course of action would be to wait for the next election so that the citizens can decide on who the next county executive would be. Until then, the county has an acting executive, Mr. John Pasota, and he is in that position now doing a fabulous job.
After it was over, I remember talking to the council president, Larry Dodd, who suggested for instance, there might be some charter changes perhaps that he might look at, but also he suggested perhaps they raise the salary from the current $85,000 a year. Would you be open to that?
I think across the board, we need to look at salaries of the government officials in Wicomico County. We are significantly lower than any other county in the state of Maryland, and it would be very difficult for someone to leave their full-time job for another full-time position that pays $85,000. We want to make sure we get good quality applicants, and salary is a factor that plays into that.
I want to turn to the other major event, which was, of course, the resignation of the library director. And in her resignation, I quote her saying, she says, "I feel like the county government needs to get out of the way and let the library director run the library along with the Board of Trustees," end quote. What is the relationship then between the county council and the library?
That came to very much of a surprise to me. I am not the liaison for the county library, so I'm not in direct contact with them on a regular basis. I know in the last legislative session, the county did secure a bond bill to build an extension to the Pittsville Library, which came from a town hall meeting, and Councilman Joe Holloway attended and was a strong advocate for. The county has funded the library 100% for the county allotment. It's difficult to work in a government agency, I understand that, but the county has an operational relationship with all of our offices and our enterprise funds. And people resign from their jobs for various reasons, personal reasons, by their own choice, and it's her individual right to no longer work for a governmental agency. I don't necessarily see that as a reflection on the county council. We've had employees at the library for over 20 years, one for almost 30 years, so I don't really see the correlation, and I'm sorry she feels that way.
I want to turn now to your own background and that of Scott. But both of you are small business people. Scott obviously owns the Brick Room in downtown. You have a number of businesses. One of the things I want to ask you about is what that experience does in terms of how you function as a member of the county council. What insight does it give you? And also to note that obviously running county government, or any government entity for that matter, is not the same as running a business.
That is very true. As an owner of 3 businesses and coming into county government, there are some similarities, but it is definitely a different mindset. I have 6 other council members that need to agree to make a process move forward. It's just not my own personal choice to change something or to change a course of action. COVID has created a very difficult time across the country, and right now, right down to this county. As far as the regulations with keeping businesses open or closed, that is decided by the governor. As it relates to businesses, COVID issues are identified at the federal and state level. And what council is doing to ensure those federal and state dollars are allotted properly is every 3 months we have the agencies that are distributing those funds report to the council and the numbers and the accountability charts of what they are seeing in those outcomes.
I want to turn, by the way, one of your top priorities, you say, is education, particularly public schools, private schools, homeschool, of course, a lot of homeschooling going on right now. What would you like to see specifically to improve the schools, and particularly during this time of the coronavirus when many students have to stay home? It's unclear whether or not they're going to be able to go back any large numbers in the near future. I know there are plans to do that, but nonetheless, it's a very uncertain future in terms of the virus. We're looking at perhaps a 3rd wave already. What's your sense about what needs to be done there on education?
So my overall vision, or back up just a little bit, my overall vision is to secure a safe, affordable, equitable education for all students in Wicomico County. Now, there are several layers to that need to be addressed. And first, with distance learning, is internet access. This past legislative session, I testified in Chop Tank's House Bill 999 for rural broadband. And as you may know, Comcast does not have the infrastructure for the last mile of fiber optics. So we explored Chop Tank. Chop Tank is able to do it. They have infrastructure down, and they are willing to hit the last mile of Wicomico, Tyaskin, Whitehaven. That's 5 years down the road. We need something sooner. The governor has now put out funding for rural broadband for distance learning. I'm working with the IT department along with a couple different entities, Chop Tank, Blue Surf, to figure out what is the best modality to have that happen in our county, specifically in District 2, because we are the last mile.
In terms of the taxes and transparency, which is the other thing that you talk about, tell me a little bit about that. And are you tying those two together? Or are they something separate? What do you mean by those?
Well, as a fiscal conservative, I do not believe raising taxes is the right decision. I think a good steward of tax dollars is what we need to focus on and making sure they're utilized in proper ways. I believe in full transparency. That would mean any type of county audit or county office enterprise fund has a public audit that is posted and easily accessible to the citizens. That would include the public library, the public school system, parks and recs, anything falling under that include tax dollars. I have received several copies of PIAs and FOIA requests that have been sent by citizens, and I don't believe that to be necessary. I think citizens should have free access to public documents, and they should not have to pursue it via a legal venue. I have citizens who will email me regularly asking me for copies of a grant proposal or a detailed budget item, and part of constituent services is to provide that.
In terms, by the way, so these things are not necessarily then on the website, as it were, that's easily accessible?
The county's budget is on the website. The county's audit is on the website. I think every enterprise or any entity that receives tax dollars needs to have their financial and performance audit easily accessible to the public, either on the county's website or on their current website.
So you're looking for a greater level of detail of some of those that somebody then should be able to access without going through the legal avenues that you point out then.
Exactly. I think that if your tax dollars are going to fund the Humane Society, you should have access to know exactly where those dollars are going. Are they going to purchase dry dog food, or are they going to purchase gifts for clients? That's part of transparency, and I think every citizen has the right to know.
Hey, by the way, have you found that there's problems in that area, or in terms of money being spent, or like that?
I think that we're just getting into this. I think in a year, and we have just received the state audit back of the Wicomico County Public School System, and I have encouraged them to put that on their website so that citizens can access it. I think it's important that they do so. It's filing a PIA or a FOIA request, I don't think is the way to go. I've had municipalities ask me for different contracts, and I have been told as a government official who represents citizens that I have to file a PIA if I would like to know that. To me, that's not transparency. And if you're an agency who's receiving government funding, that's what comes along with receiving tax dollars.
Just briefly, in about the minute we have left, as you look forward, assuming that you're reelected or you're elected to the job, what kinds of things are you looking to do in the future?
I would really like to see more community engagement. I sit on several civic organization boards, and I have found that there can be somewhat of a disconnect between government and what citizens need. It's easy for us to tell them, you need this and you need that, but unless you actually ask them, what do you need, it's hard to address those. I recently formed the Wicomico County Youth Advisory Council so that we can hear, what do youth need? How can we provide them with the resources they need to be successful, rather than telling them this is what you need? So I would like to see more community engagement.
Well, we've been speaking with County Council Member Nicole Acle. She is running to secure the District 2 seat that she was appointed to after Mark Kilmer stepped down. She's being challenged by Alex Scott, the owner of the Brick Room in downtown Salisbury. Appreciate you taking the time to talk with us this morning.
Well, thank you very much. And you can find out more information on www.nicoleacle.com, or you can always reach out to me via cell phone, 410-251-0122. It was great speaking with you.
Here, same. This has been Delmarva Today. I'm Don Rush. Thanks for listening.